Hi, how you doing? I didn't see you there. Thanks for coming by. Sit down, have a cup of coffee. I want to talk to you about something. I remember that wonderful story you were telling me, and I was just remembering it again. I just make sure I had it right. So as I recall, you made friends with this young guy, nice fella. His name was Joe, right? Joe, about 25 years old. Recently been dating this girl, and the girl says, listen, I'd like you to meet my father. The father's a businessman. His name's Henry. Henry's a businessman, and that's all he knows is business. Can't talk sports, can't talk music, can't talk politics. He's only business. But the daughter, is like you would like Joe to, sit down and have a conversation and kind of like okay the guy. All right, so what do you want from me, you said. Joe says, I know nothing about business. This is all foreign to me. I'm a paleontologist. I study fossils and animals and plant fossils and stuff like that. Business, I got no idea. How am I going to talk to this guy? Can you help me out? So you told him, you said, Joe, there's library books about, business. I can't teach a business in 5 minutes, And Joe says, I know, but you're a CPA, you're a smart person, you're adept, you understand this stuff. Can you just, get me something I can talk intelligently so I don't sound like an idiot, all right? So you said, all right, fine, okay. How about if we start off, we'll go through a couple of accounting, financial metrics and numbers. We'll talk about some strategies, and then, we'll talk a little bit about things you want to look out for that you don't blunder into. Joe says, sounds good to me. You're the boss. Okay, so I said, okay, so what did you talk to him about? What were these things? So he said, well, you said, all right, Joe, the first thing we want to talk about is things like margins and markups. And I said, that's a good place to start, but hold on just a minute, because I want to get my thinking cap on and take my coat off, because I understand I'm going to be using my brain here. All right, hold on. All right. Margins and markups. Yeah. Been a little while for me. What did you tell him about that? And so, you were showing him here how the gross profit margin is the selling price minus the cost of an item, or, your whole portfolio. But let's look at an item divided by the selling price times 100. So, for example, say, for instance, you're selling furniture in the retail trade. You buy an end table or something for $100. That's the variable cost. You sell it for $300. So 300 minus 100, which is 200, divided by the selling price of 300 times 100 is 67%. That's your margin, 67%. It's a quick look at profitability. You can look at it and say, look, of my sales dollars, 67% or 67 cents out of a dollar is going to go to fixed costs, your fixed cost you have, and then after that towards your profit. And the other part of it, the other 33%, is basically paying back the cost of whatever it was that you're selling. Okay, that's right. I remember that. Okay, now let's go to markup. So markup is a little different, but it's kind of related. Okay, so we're going to take the selling price minus the cost again. Same thing, but we're going to divide that by the cost and multiply it by 100. Once again, you buy your furniture for 100, you sell it, say, for 300. You had a $200 profit. You divide it by the $100 cost, and that's times 100 is a 200% markup. So the 200% markup isn't a profitability thing. The markup isn't. It represents the percentage of the profit that the cost is. Okay, so in this example, the profit's $200, right? So as a percentage of the $100, 200% is the cost there, is the markup. It's not really a helpful management task. Okay, all right, Joe's like, okay. What can I do with that? Well, how do I maneuver that? Well, okay, you might want to do is, if you know what the margin is, you can back into the markup here. And in the last example, we had a 67% margin, and the formula would be 1 divided by 1 minus the margin less 1. So margin was 67%, 0.667, 1 divided by 0.333, which is 300%, or, less 1 would be, or 3 minus 1 is 2. make it to a percent, it's 200%. So if you know the markup, you can reverse engineer into the margin. And likewise, if you know the markup, like I say, if you know the markup, you can compute the margin too. Now, this formula is, looks a little hairier. You take 1 minus 1 over the markup percentage plus 100% divided by 100%. Looks a little scary. It's not that bad. And in the last scenario, we had a 200% markup. So 200 plus 100, that equals 300. So 1 over 300 divided by 10 is 1 over 3, 1/3. So 1 minus 1/3 is 67%, right? You can go back and forth between the markup and the margins. So now in theoretically, okay, you want to set a margin, and from there you convert it to a markup. And with the markup, it's easier to price your items, okay? So let's say you want an 80% margin, which is a very nice margin. I think people would be pleased with that kind of margin. So if 80% of your sales dollars generate money towards your fixed expenses and then your profit. So you want to convert from 80% to your markup. So 1 over 1 minus the margin, 1 minus 1 over 0.8 less 1, and the math there is simply, 400% markup. So what you do with that is with a 400% markup, you know how to mark your products. You know how to increase the cost of your products to put them up for sale. So, if you look here, so for example, you have an item that's $200, a $400 markup is $800, 4 times 2, $800, you add the cost plus the markup, and that's your retail price, $1,000. Next one is $500 item. If you're going to mark it up 400%, that means the markup is $2,000. 2,000 plus 500 equals $2,500. If you're able to sell it for those prices, you're going to have a nice margin. Now, I found, or you told Joe, I find that business people really do dwell on this concept of the margins. And of course, to increase the margins, what do? Well, you have to sell your products for more, or you have to buy and produce your products for less, right? That makes sense. So once again, to increase your margins, the one thing you could do is increase your selling price. But, well, that's kind of difficult because you have competition, right? Competitions might not be, as high as what you want. You want to sell it for more. And frequently, salespeople, who work for you might be saying, oh, we can't sell it at that price. You got to cut your prices to make the sale. So sometimes the salespeople are trying to keep the price down so they can make the sale. The second thing is you can reduce your costs, your variable costs to acquire or make your product. Now, that's frequently the go-to that many people do. Hey, we got to cut costs, we got to cut costs, we got to cut costs. And there's some downsides to that. So, for example, one of the downsides is, if you're going to be buying cheaper parts or cheaper ingredients, they could be inferior. And they could break down. And you could develop a bad reputation. There's companies out there in the marketplace that try to do things, cheaper, and they got burned by it because the product quality went down and people didn't want to buy from them anymore. And that's really difficult to recapture. Trying to get your brand back up again after it's taken a slump is really almost impossible. Companies have gone bankrupt for that. And the second thing is, trying to cut costs is, if you don't invest in your employees, you're going to get turnover, you're going to get poor morale, which is going to lead to poor quality. And once again, you got bad rep. So, I'm going to cut costs, you got to be very careful and strategic because everything could go sideways. And this is the dilemma that management teams face. This is the challenge. I said, wow, that is a challenge. That's pretty adept. Now, what did you tell Joe next? What you told Joe was that let's talk about solutions to these challenges. To sell your product for more than the competition, you have to differentiate your product, or you have to provide a service and addendum to it. You need a pleasing user experience. Is your product or service more convenient? Can you focus on the customer experience? Can they order online easily? Is it easy to return? Is there music involved? Is there a smell involved? Is there a personal thank you note at the end? Does the experience make the consumer happy? This is basically the realm of marketing. I mean, marketing's a lot, but this is one of the aspects of marketing, right? And normally to do these things, to increase your awareness, to increase that satisfaction, costs more money. So before we said we wanted to cut costs, well, actually these kind of things, may add cost. You may need to hire a marketing manager. The marketing manager may say we need an advertising campaign. These things do work. Advertising works, and they cost money, right? Okay, now let's talk about the second component, and that is reducing costs. Here we're talking about the variable cost, the costs of materials to make your product. We're not talking about the fixed cost right now, although reducing fixed costs is good too, right? So if you want to change suppliers that are cheaper, I encourage you to use statistical sampling techniques to assure that you're getting good quality materials. We can quantify statistical tests using Excel. Excel will help you do that. Sample and test repeatedly. Any bonehead can just pick up a cheaper supplier, but it takes good management to select a cheaper supplier with a proviso that you're going to maintain quality. And you're going to maintain quality by testing, by making sure. You're going to check it closely because, like I said before, if you just go the cheap way out and the quality goes down, it's going to be hurting to your business. Another effective methodology to cut costs is enhancing automation. Use more computers, use more equipment. You're going to convert from a fixed cost to a variable cost. Okay, so for example, like at the supermarket checkout, they put in the self-checkout lanes. Then they don't need so many cashiers, right? For example, if say you have a service environment, you have an accounting firm and they're processing tax returns. Well, you're going to, that firm, you're going to want to have all kinds of automation in there, tax automation, hot printers, so that the person doing the work can just, turn around and do, more returns in a day's work, get their productivity up. And once again, you're trading out more fixed costs and less variable costs. You're going to get more productivity out of your employees. Okay. So you told Joe, listen, when you're speaking with your father-in-law, Henry, your future father-in-law, you're not married yet, your future father-in-law, I think you have to appreciate that running a business successfully takes creativity, okay? And this just to scratch the surface of a business, obviously. But I think now you have something that you can talk to Henry about. And that's what you said. And I said, I think you did too. So what did Joe say? How'd it work out? So apparently Joe came back later and said, you know what, it worked out really well, This father, Henry, says that, had a nice conversation. It worked out really well. And at the end of the conversation, he said, you're a paleontologist. This was a nice conversation you had. How did you understand about this? Well, you kind of said, I got a friend. I got, a friend here who's a CPA. And we chatted a little bit about business beforehand. So it kind of showed your card a little bit. Joe showed his card. And I said, well, how did that happen? What worked out for that? Well, apparently Henry said, you know what? That's pretty cool because I got a CPA. It's kind of a dud. I mean, does taxes fine, but I don't want to hear from that person the whole rest of the year. That's all they're focused on. Whereas it sounds like this person understands not just taxes, but strategy and, all kinds of other things. Maybe, would it be okay if I reached out to your friend and see if perhaps they can help me in my business? So I said, really? Are you telling me that maybe you got an extra client out of this? And you said, yeah, actually, we did. The person called up, you invited him to the office. You showed him all the services you could provide, some statistical analysis and other kinds of things you could do for the firm rather than just the regular tax and audit, which is fine, but you're able to provide an elevated level of service. I said, wow, that's awesome. You know what? That is why you are one ace accountant. Let's give you a round of applause, all right? Okay, bye-bye.